Welcome to the Randy Report. I'm Randy Slavacek, your host, and I'm also the editor of my blog of the same name, The Randy Report, which you can find every single day online at therandyreport.com, where I cover politics, entertainment, and pop culture of interest to the LGBT community and everybody else. I'm really excited about tonight's show because I am talking to one of my favorite bloggers and authors, Matthew Rettenmund. This year, he has released two books. One, Encyclopedia Madonnica 2.0, 2.0 because he wrote the original Encyclopedia Madonnica 20 years ago. This is an updated version which includes the past 20 years of her career, life, music, and everything in between. It is literally the book on Madonna. And his second book he shared with us this year is called Starf cker. That's the name. Put the asterisks in if you want. And Starf cker documents Rettenmund's affection, in the case of Madonna, okay, it's pure mania, for movie, television, and music personalities. From his years as a star-obsessed gayby to his contradictory careers in porn and as a teen magazine editor, names will be named, Rettenmund details and deconstructs his and our passion for celebrity. Now, this is normally where I would play a song that related to the show tonight because I like a little music to get the mood. But my first thought was, oh, well, it's the holidays. And we're talking about Madonna, 1 + 1 = 2. Oh, I'll play Madonna's Holiday. But I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to do that. But then I thought, Madonna is the queen of reinvention, so what about a reinvented version of Holiday? And I remember that one of my favorite bands, Capital Cities, you can find their music online at capitalcitiesmusic.com, did a terrific cover version of Holiday just a couple of years ago. So I'm going to play a little bit of that. I hope the guys at Capital Cities won't sue me since I'm plugging them right here, capitalcitiesmusic.com. And then we're going to talk to Matthew Rettenmund about his two books this year, Encyclopedia Madonnica 2.0 and Starf cker. But here's a little music to get the holiday season going.
Yeah, this is Matthew. How's it going?
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this interview. I'm so excited about this. I've been reading the book. I haven't put it down. I kept reading, knowing you're a bit of a fan of Madonna's.
She's okay.
She's okay. I kept waiting, where is the Madonna chapter going to be? Where is the Madonna chapter going to be? And then obviously at the end of the book, you actually share with us where all this is. But and obviously you've done Encyclopedia Madonnica, so there's a whole book to relate to that. But I kept waiting for all of the Madonna stuff, and so I was surprised.
Well, I made her literally the be-all, end-all of the book.
You did. As a blogger myself with the Randy Report, and I'm always aware of the people out there that I admire, that I read every day, the whole blogging thing is of interest to me. And you actually have a great chapter in your book, Starf cker. Can I say it out loud? Of course I can. It's my radio show, Starf cker, which I love. It's interesting because you did talk about blogging and some of the challenges that are in there. And every now and then I think about so many of us that I think, you know, we're kind of aware of each other to a degree and in different, especially you and Joe Jervis at Joe My God and Andy Toll at Toll Road and Kenneth in the 212 and so many things out there. And I always wonder what other people think about the whole thing of blogging and the business of it, or the sussing out of what you do and don't post. And there's some things that some of us do post, and there are a few things that come up I find that we all post, like this 10% of important news that you can avoid. It is interesting to see us all have our different personalities out there.
Yeah, and also when you're blogging, even if your blog is basically an aggregation blog, like if you're just aggregating other stories and not doing any kind of writing yourself, there's still a way to have, a very strong personality, because it's in what you choose. It's in how you curate all the possible things you can put on there. So that kind of decides how personal the blog is, as opposed to how far-reaching it tries to be, and then that leads to who's reading you and what their response is going to be too. But it is amazing how different, because I get along really well with all the the local bloggers and basically every blogger I've ever met. We have lots in common, but whatever our blogs have in common, they're also very different, and I think each one has something that's a little different to offer.
And I think that's the fun part about it is, for me, because I'm sure you do the exact same thing. I'm at my computer, 9 hours a day. And there are things that I see out there that some people cover and I go, that's really not me. Or I get, tons of press releases like you do. And there are things that, it's always funny to me, two things about the press releases. One, when someone clearly has no idea what my blog is about, and it has literally nothing to do with anything LGBT
Right, they represent beautiful female models, and they want you to use them in a story that you're an editorial you're putting together.
or vacuum cleaners.
Right. Or vacuum cleaners,
But it's interesting that every, things will come by me and I'm like, that doesn't resonate with me. And it's really, it's kind of what makes us all kind of our individual chefs in a kitchen, because that 120% or so that, we feel that we have to mention something about it, but also the way we do it. Because I love your news roundups, and you do touch on politics. Politics isn't your biggest thing for you, but you do make a point of calling politicians out, and you name names and point fingers when it's something rather large that you feel passionate about. And then there are other people that, it is their thing. Like Andy Toll has probably a big thing about him for his politics, and I know Joe Jervis, the same thing. But there are things that I look at and go, that's not important to me, or that's not my thing. Or
right. Well, you kind of have to decide that. It is a challenge. There's only so many hours and minutes and seconds in the day. And one thing I always find funny about blogging is sometimes when you have something that's going to take off in some way. Other times you think, this is going to be, I think this might do well, and then it doesn't. But what really I find so amusing is when I put up something at the last second as filler, and it ends up being the biggest thing in months.
I was going to ask you about that very specific thing, because I know I deal with, not that this interview is about me, but I'm related, because once we're talking about blogs, I'll just coexist with you here. That is a funny thing that most people don't see. And you see those blog hits that on a daily basis your readers don't know, but on a daily basis the same one is getting hundreds of hits, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. I have 3 or 4 blog hits that every day, every week. I'm like, people are still searching for that. Are they really?
The one that blew my mind a couple of years ago was when I posted. At that time, I used to do a lot more where I would look at all the tabloids. Cause in New York, we get them on Wednesday, and that's faster than most of the country. So the printed tabloids. So I would read them for anything that seemed kind of gay-related or interesting or wacky, and then I would do a little scan of part of an article and link back to them. And I remember there was one I did. I was going on a trip, a business trip, and there was an article about Zac Efron was spotted holding hands with a guy, and they had really stressed the "with a guy" part. So I scanned that headline and I put it in. I left, and then I was waiting in this driving rainstorm to get back to New York, and I turned on my phone and I just randomly I checked my hits for the day, which I don't usually do when I'm traveling, and I had this astronomical number that was just far above anything I'd ever had before. And I thought, well, this has got to be a mistake, and then I looked and it was that, and somehow that had been picked up on social media. No one had put it up there yet, and everybody was very interested in the concept of Zac Efron holding a guy's hand.
Isn't that interesting?
So who knew?
I had that recently happen with the Holland Taylor coming out.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of posted a little earlier than other people did, because it was still on the local radio level. And I woke up and tens of thousands of hits the next morning. I'm like, really? Wow, it's just, they surprise you, these things. It really does. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about Starf cker. I love the book because I do want to get to first and foremost, and I think it's the thing that stands out in this book more than anything is, and you've got to be proud of it. You do express a little pride in it. Your turn of phrase.
Oh, thank you. Gee, that makes me feel good. No, I'm kidding.
No,
like I say it in the worst possible way.
You really, and I've noticed, I've read you for years on boyculture.com, and I knew you're really great with writing the headline, and you have a great way of pulling in a double entendre and things, but literally throughout the entire book you have these great turns of phrases that every paragraph, there's something very interesting in the way you say something. And at one point, on page 76, you mentioned, I was already very much in love with words and my agility with them. Wordplay was my foreplay. And I thought, first of all, the fact that you knew it, which is a good thing. I don't go, ooh, boo on you for like being conceited. I go, wow, that you were, as a child, you were aware that you had an interesting relationship with words. I think that's great.
Well, I thank you for saying that. I do think that, like when I was a kid, I liked to write, and I didn't understand. There were a lot of other people that would say that they had a hard time writing, they didn't know how to write. And to me, it just felt like it was easy. It was an easy thing to do. It can become too easy. You know, you can get a little lazy, but I really liked it. I think because I was fascinated from an early age with what words meant and the different shades and tones, things that are not in the dictionary. You know, about like what each word means and how you put them together. And I was always really excited when I read something that was expressed in a slightly different way or a funny way. I like that kind of humor better than just, I mean, I like dumb humor too, but I like using kind of humor that challenges people to be articulate and to understand the difference. And that's also what gets me into trouble on my blog when I do blog, because like, especially when I write things politically, I do call people out for saying things based on what I think they're meaning, because to me, words matter. I mean, words matter a lot. You can't just state something that may be factually true and then not also wonder, well, why did you say it that way? Why are you saying it in this moment? Like, all these things matter and they all kind of mean something. So I guess communication is really important to me, and I like to communicate with people who are like-minded, and the best way to do it is to try to put something out there that you think is going to attract people that are like-minded. That's kind of why I've always been into like the double entendres, triple entendres. There's no end to how many entendres there can be.
And you knew that from an early age, right? Like, people responded to your writing.
Yes, I definitely. I mean, I think as soon as I published something that was national, I did start to get that praise, and it was important to me to get that. And I think that that's part of what led me into blogging, was because I wasn't writing books at the time. I didn't have an idea for a book, but I really wanted to get my thoughts and ideas out there. And I sort of use blogging as a way to really keep my writing agile and in top form. It can also be a negative thing, because then you can get, as I found, you can get so caught up in it that you don't have time to do other things that might be a little more substantial. Because it's as impactful as I hope my blog is, and how many people I think will read it and enjoy it and maybe learn something, or maybe I'll learn something from them. It's still, it's kind of ephemeral. I mean, it's been around for 10 years, and the post exists somewhere, but, you know, as you know, like old posts, for the most part, except for the ones we talked about that kind of go viral and never die, most of them are never looked at again.
Right.
And you spend a lot of time on some of those. Some of the ones that are kind of meaty, you spend some time, and they might be relevant for a day or two. So it's a little different for a book, which can live on for a long time. I mean, the first book I ever published stayed in print. It's still in print.
Right. And
that's been 20 years. So, you know, that's possible. There are other cases of books that I wrote that didn't stay in print for 20 years, but I just feel like you do have to measure how much time and how much energy you're putting into something, whether it's online or in print form, just to decide, like, is it worth your time? Is it worth your energy?
It's interesting you say that, because let me skip back to the blog when I first called you, I should tell the radio audience, I first reached out to Matt to do this because I just launched the online radio show companion to the Randy Report, now called the Randy Report. And I immediately thought, who are people that I'd want to talk to? Who are people that I find interesting and blah, blah, blah. So I reached out to Matt. We've never met, but I've been reading you forever. We were going to talk a few days ago, and I knew you have different things going on, and suddenly on Monday I saw that you have Starf cker out, and it's new and available, and we're going to have a link to it here on the webpage for the radio show, and sell it, buy support. But I said, well, I have to read this. I'd feel stupid if I didn't read this before I spoke to you. And so your publicist sent me over a copy, and I've been reading through it. It was fascinating. And I originally, though, wanted to talk to you about boyculture.com and doing all of that. So I'm going to flip back and forth, because you just touched on something that does impact. It's of interest to me, because the thing about blogging, I think most people probably start off blogging because it's about writing. I know for me it did. I was kind of inspired to start blogging because I read Joe My God every day, Joe Jervis. And I'm sure you know that, like, Joe started out writing, when blogging first started, about when you first started Boy Culture, it was really about writing, more about authorship a little bit more. And today it's kind of all shifted for most leading LGBT bloggers into a bit of curating and
aggregating. It is true. I mean, part of it is you do run out of things to say. I mean, you're not going to be able to write something that fits into a blog post, I don't think anyway, every single day.
No,
and I think that we all kind of get, I mean, and I'm not questioning anyone's motives, because, like, I think Toll Road is kind of like the gay blog of record, and I think, you know, Joe's blog is kind of like the gay political blog of record. But I mean, I think we all do get to this point where you start seeing what kind of reaction you're getting and what kind of hits you're getting, and you are going to start tailoring it a little bit. You're going to start saying, oh, okay, so sexy stuff gets hits.
Yeah.
I mean, the news feed you told me about, that takes me forever. I mean, that's such a pain to put together. And it's probably stupid for me to do it, because what I'm really doing is I'm spending a lot of time to find ways of sending people to other blogs or to other sources. But in so doing, I'm hopeful that they're going to keep coming back to me to see, like, what my take is. But what's interesting about it is I now have each one of those links. I have ways of, you know, seeing which each outgoing link is getting the most hits. And while there are certain gay-related topics that get a lot of hits, the political stuff gets fewer hits, even though it gets more feedback. Anything that at all sounds like it's been elsewhere gets less hits. But anything that's sexy, they will ferret out. So, and I mix mine up. Like, I try to deliberately, like, I'll usually lead, like, the very top thing will usually be something pretty important. But sometimes you'll be going through and there'll be something really kind of serious, and then the next one will be like, here's a picture of a guy's cute ass. And then the next one will be another political thing. So kind of, I really bury it to test and see, and sure enough, people will read through there, and they always ferret out those things that are kind of sexier, whether literally sexier or just kind of more fun, you know, kind of, you know, more topical. So it's very interesting to me, like, what people will choose. But I do think that, I mean, there are times when I think, oh, I'm not going to post this, everybody's got it. But if it's something that's kind of hot, and I do post it, invariably it gets tons of hits. So it does kind of lead us over into, you know, other territory from what we started with.
You know, my husband, Michael, who's a publicist, and you guys have worked on different things in the past. Michael tells me all the time, he goes, you know, I know you really, Randy, I know you love the political stuff, but I'm sure your readers go for the sexy stuff first. And it is true. I agree with you completely. For the Randy Report, it's the exact same thing. I will be passionate about those things, but me being passionate about it doesn't necessarily translate into readers necessarily being passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, it's not like none of it hits, but it's a lot easier to hit with something sexy or fun or humorous. You know, the humorous is good too, but you have to be quick. And, you know, it's also hard when, like, you know, I have a day job, and I've always had a job. I even had a much more complicated day job when I first started this. And, you know, you really have to realize, you know, you're competing with other blogs that some of the bloggers don't have day jobs. Like, some of them are actually able to, it's rare, but some of them are actually able to support themselves from the proceeds of their blogs. And so it becomes even more of a question of, like, well, what am I putting up? And then I think it even pushes you even more into, like, putting up things that are very popular. But also things change. I mean, you know, when I first started blogging, my blog posts were ridiculous. I had like 3,000 word posts. Right. You know, I was just dying to have an outlet. So I literally had 3,000 word posts, and I still have crazy posts sometimes. But, you know, people like lists. Lists became a big thing when BuzzFeed was born.
Yes.
Whenever I do a list, it gets lots of shares. Anything naked, anything that pretends to be naked, semi-naked. But Google doesn't like that, you know.
Well, it's interesting because the reason I even bring up the whole thing about the blogging is that I like writing. I do like writing, and I think you like writing. But the thing that you pointed out is it takes so much time, and then you post it, and when, I hate to say it, but when the numbers aren't there, and you go, wow, I put so much time into that, and I was really thinking about what I was communicating here, and blah, 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 and you're like, And so I still do it. I personally do it on occasion because it is the thing that I'm passionate about. But to keep, you know, the blog going, you have to go where your readers are, basically.
And I would like to probably, and I will at some point change or branch out or end the blog. Something will happen, will be different. I mean, whenever I do work for other blogs, I do a lot of work for outside blogs, like entertainment blogs. It is a different mindset. You know, once you know that the blog has a very specific focus, and you really know what you're looking for to fill it. It's much more of a job. I mean, there's no less art to it, but I mean, it's definitely much more defined, and it's interesting to approach it that way. Because like when I'm doing my blog, it's kind of like I actually feel like I'm painting. You know, like I'm sitting at an empty canvas, and I can paint a dog today, or I can do a nude, or I can paint something abstract. Whereas when I'm working for an entertainment, like a popular entertainment blog, I know that I have to look for very specific things. It's going to be a Kardashian story. It's going to be someone died. It's going to be someone got married. It's going to be someone had a baby. Here's a baby bump. Like the very specific things to look for. So I probably will move into something that's more into that arena, like that kind of thing where it's more specific. But I don't know. It will be either that or I'll have to end it at some point, because I really think at some point you have to move on. I mean, you can't just keep going with the same kind of medium and the same project for forever. And I did make time over the past year and a half to work on these 2 books, and I was able to produce 2 books. So if you take some time off, I found I was able to actually do some other productive things aside from just sitting glued to my chair.
Yeah. Let me go back to Starf cker, because I made some notes as I was reading. It was interesting. I kept thinking, oh, Matt's going to sit there and listen to me talk, and he's going to be like, oh, you didn't like say anything interesting. It's so interesting how when we interview someone, we think about what they think on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I mean, I interviewed kids forever, like for a teen magazine that I worked for, and you always wonder what's going through their head. Like,
wow, that's an original thought, or this. I recently was talking to Jeremy Kinzer, who I know you know very well.
Oh, yeah.
We met up in LA, and we were both talking about the idea of who is your dream interview. And I said, well, there's some people I'd want to interview, but I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want them to think I was stupid for not asking interesting questions, and of course, I'm not being disrespectful to your queen. I know Madonna recently, in her series of interviews for this new album, she kind of like judged people on their interviews. She's like,
the whole drinking game, right?
Yeah, drinking game. Yeah, that was dumb question. You have to drink now, because and I would hate to interview someone that I respected so much and have them go, wow, that was a dumb question. Wow, you're not very good.
Well, at least she did it humorously, because
she did.
But I totally know what you mean. Like, you worry that they're going to be that you're going to make a bad impression, or that they're going to seem unimpressed. But I mean, I feel like I've interviewed so many people now too that I know that they're in a mode of just answering questions, and not me. I mean, because I'm not doing that many interviews. But when people are promoting things, they're just kind of on a hamster wheel, and they won't even remember it. And that's just one way to think about it. It's like, unless you really screw up or just happen to ask them the ultimate question and they're really into you, they're never going to remember it. I mean, some of these kids I interviewed when I worked for the teen magazine, some of them I had great relationships with. Like, we worked together a lot. Sometimes I did photo shoots with them, put them on our cover. Sometimes I was the first person to put them in a magazine. And some of them I would see years later, and they'd draw a blank. Like, I'd have to really walk them through, like, how we knew each other, because I wanted to say hello, because half of them were, like, super great, and they remembered everything, and they were super nice, and some of the bigger ones even. But some of the other ones, they don't remember. So I kind of don't stress out anymore about interviews. There's always a little bit of a stress, especially if you have to meet someone in person. It's like I had to go interview Tab Hunter recently for his documentary.
Yes.
And I had actually met him before, but I was still kind of like, what is this going to be like? Is he going to be prickly? And he's a little more conservative than I am. Is he going to not want to talk about gay stuff? But it was great. So I think the best approach is just to fire away and I hope that they're not having a bad day.
You did mention in the book at one point, talking about working on the teen magazine, being at launch parties or something, and doing being there with other editors or interviewers, and you would talk about coming up with the question so that you'd get the answer, maybe the one thing that would like set you up aside from your competitors. Would you take time to think about, gosh, what can I ask that they haven't answered?
I did, because I founded the magazine, but I did do a lot of the interviews, although in the later years the other editors did. But I did like to do that, because I figured I was kind of well-rounded individual, and I like to kind of look at the bigger picture, like, well, what's interesting about this person? Why do these kids find this person fascinating? What are some things that somebody else might not ask? And we also did a little mind game where, even though we had a very, bubblegum teeny bopper magazine, we prided ourselves on not being the ones to ask the stupidest of the stupid questions. So we didn't want to ask like the most basic questions. We'd let those be asked by someone else, and we would try to come up with something a little different. Because if you're asking someone a question, whether they're a teenage wannabe star or somebody who's already very established or someone you're intimidated by intellectually, which happens a lot too, if you hit that one question that they find so insightful, it's not only going to lead to a good interview, it might lead to even better stuff later on. It might lead to better interviews. It might lead to better access. And that was the thing about working in the magazine industry that was so that was just kind of underscored no matter what you were doing, was access, access, access. I mean, it really, and I think it can be a negative thing. It definitely dictates what questions you ask, when, and how you behave toward people, what kinds of things what kind of pictures you'll publish. I mean, it really dictates everything. And that's why I think, with a lot of the celebrity tabloids and websites that are out now, there is kind of there's a real shakiness there about like how objective they are, because if you just have a gossip site and you're not even looking to be malicious, but if you publish something that maybe Sandra Bullock doesn't like, you might not get her the next time. And her publicist might say, not only you're not going to get her, but you're not going to get my other clients.
Right.
So there is that sort of tail wagging the dog aspect that was very much present even when we were writing for little girls.
And you did experience that would publicists really would they literally say that, or would they just do it and not articulate, the reason why I'm not giving you access is because blah, blah, blah?
Well, let's put it this way. They never would call you and say it directly, but it was heavily implied. Mm-hmm. It was heavily implied. And I did have a shoot that was killed because this entertainment network didn't like the vibe that was present, from the actor.
Zac Efron?
Yes, it was.
Right.
They didn't like the vibe.
Because it was a little too gay.
It was, in my opinion, that was exactly what they were saying, was that they felt it was gay. They definitely also thought it was, they didn't like the fact that he was shirtless, which now is a joke because 10 minutes later he was almost naked, every chance he gets. Right. But the time they didn't like it, and I felt that it was very self-serving, because they were making it seem like, the photographer who did it wasn't even a shoot for me, it was a shoot that I ended up buying, but the photographer who did the shoot, they sort of made it seem like, he didn't really know what he was doing. He was kind of a newcomer at the time. He was 18, but he was still kind of like new to it all. So they felt that he was kind of tricked into it, which was not the case. And so they sort of tried to make us feel like we were taking advantage of him. What they were really doing was kind of looking out for him by saying, like, look, don't give away your shirtless pictures until you get Rolling Stone. That's what it's about. Like, that's what it's more about, like, saving the good stuff for the bigger, higher level publications. So.
Did that ever bother you?
So if I had, in that case, I've never gotten over it because it pissed me off, because I would have had this amazing photo shoot that would have been iconic and would have gone everywhere, and you'd still be seeing it floating around the internet. I had to make the decision. I could have. Although actually, I couldn't have run it actually, because I could have, but it would have been troublesome, because what happened was they got the photographer involved too, and she also wanted to continue working for all these people in Hollywood, so she didn't really want me to go through it either. So I didn't like that, because I did feel like it was kind of meddlesome. And then it happened again later when, also with Zac, and none of this had to do with him, by the way. I don't think he would even have any clue that these conversations were happening. He was always so nice. But later I also had a call from a publicist who was like, I can't believe you're going to publish these photos of him and Vanessa in Hawaii. They're too racy. They're making out. And I just but that one I shut down, because I said, look, this was in public. Right. They did it in public, clearly knew they were being photographed.
He had to know it.
They're both of age. I think clearly they wanted this little kind of growing up moment, in front of the cameras. They wanted those pictures out there. And I said, then the fact of the matter is, if I didn't publish it, one of the other people bidding on it would have. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to publish this. And they're not that racy. We're not going to publish the ones that, are a little too racy. We're going to publish all the others. And I'm glad I did it, because it didn't really affect my relationship with anyone. And, that was like our best year. We sold so many copies of the magazine, in part because of pictures of Zac Efron. There's a point where you have to say, like, look, this is unfair for you to try to control this. And I think they got that, The other shoot was something that they had a much easier way of limiting it than this one. This one, if I'd said, "Oh, I'll respect you and I won't publish it," they knew it was going out anyway. It was already going to be on every website.
Right.
You know, within minutes after. Yeah, after the embargo ended, it was going to be out there anyway. So, but it was interesting. I liked that sort of. It was kind of a fun sociological thing too, a psychological thing to be working with actors and publicists and TV networks and movie studios and publishers that you have to work with on your side. You know, I liked all that sort of juggling.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting in the book, Starf cker, available now, is I love plugging everything. Sell, buy, support. You mentioned one of the things, and I'm surprised at this because especially when someone is up and coming, but it kind of happened almost out of your grasp, as you describe it in the book. The Justin Bieber thing, you admit that you feel like you were maybe 2 months a little late, or his team told you were. And because he was kind of discovered online, it was where online kind of became more important than magazines or something. Mm-hmm. Am I kind of...
True. I mean, he was the beginning of that because, you know, there had been some other people that were big online, and we would get a lot of hits on, in those days, MySpace and other sites. And so we would monitor people that way, and sometimes we'd go too early with someone, and then you feel stupid because you have someone who no one cares about in the magazine. But with him, we weren't that late at all. We were maybe, like I said in the book, I think like 2 months late. And I just thought it was hilarious that like when he finally came in to meet us, finally, you know, 2 months later, he's still like nobody, you know, into the greater world, and yet he's huge online, and every little girl knows who he is. You know, there was already an air of like he was royalty. It was ridiculous. It was like already we were being made to feel grateful that he's deigning to like doing coverage with us. And his mom who was perfectly nice, but she kind of mentioned something about like, oh, you guys were a little later than some of the other bands, which is rare. Which is rare because actually we were known for being way early, if anything, because we like to try people out. Yeah. We had Zac Efron basically. I mean, we had him so far back, it was basically a picture of his parents dating, you know what I'm saying? We really were, it was far back. But with Justin, we were a hair late, and she actually mentioned it. I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, really? And he was a little cocky little guy then. He did his first shoot with us. I wasn't at that one, it was in LA, but, you know, right away, I still have the emails, and the publicist was like, or not the publicist, my photographer was like, oh my God, this kid is like, got his head in the clouds already. Right. What's he going to be like when he gets bigger? And of course, he's never stopped getting bigger. So, and the head is still in the clouds to some extent.
Well, I personally, actually, on my blog, The Randy Report, there's a part of me that I kind of boycott him a little bit because I disapprove of his bad behavior so much. And, you know, I'm not going to come out and campaign against someone, but I'll just not write about them because that's the only thing in my head that I'm just not going to put anything out there. Not that anyone cares about whether I'm covering him or not.
Right.
But I just can't contribute.
He does get beaten up too. Like, and one thing I learned also when I was at that magazine is like when you work with people directly, you have a certain impression of them. Mm-hmm. But then regardless of that, unless you're like super tight with them, regardless of that, once they become famous, you have like a whole different impression that's based on the fame, and you can have like a negative. Like I didn't like Britney Spears. I was like, oh, I just can't stand her music. Mm-hmm. She's just, I don't get it. Like, why do people like her? Mm-hmm. And yet, then I'd remind myself, well, I have met her, and she was really nice, you know. Mm-hmm. So why am I so annoyed by this? You know, why am I annoyed by this person? Or I'd make a comment about Miley or someone, and then realize, yeah, they're actually really nice in person. Mm-hmm. You know, so it is like it is a divide, and I think that the more famous they get, the easier it is to totally love or totally hate someone. And we have to kind of watch that. It gets a little crazy. And that's part of what, you know, I did. I think that's part of what I'm capturing when I did the Madonna book, Encyclopedia Madonnica, because it functions as a fan book, you know, an unironic fan book and an assessment of her career and her personality. But it is also a little like, supposed to be like a little bit of a pop art experiment of like, look how ridiculous this is, that we know all this information. Like, part of what makes it funny is not just, you know, me trying to write something funny, but just the fact that I was able to gather all that information is kind of hilarious just in and of itself.
Well, speaking of Madonna, let's talk about that, because there's no way we can talk to you without talking about anyone who goes to boyculture.com. There's always a daily reason to talk about Queen of Pop. And I adore her too, so you know. I do. I really adore her. And I've said for years, I am kind of in awe of her in part, there's no denying her talent, but more so for me, I've always been in awe of the fact that she is an inch or a minute ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to pop culture. If it's not cool when she does it, she makes it cool. It is the cool thing to do. I've never seen anyone who had their thumb on the pulse of pop culture more than Madonna.
And she loves that. I mean, and she actually is very involved in it. And there's a lot of huge stars that aren't really engaged anymore, and they just kind of go along with,
Yes.
well, what does the public want from me?
Right.
And she's much more thinking, okay, what do they want from me? And what would it be like if I did the polar opposite? And then what's going on in this subculture over here, and what's happening in this trend, and how can I, take this and make it my own and add to it? Like, she's still very engaged. So anyone who's hoping she'll die or retire, I think they're in for some sad days ahead, because she seems to be ready to just keep going and going.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back to the very beginning, a very good place to start. What was it about Madonna that captured you from so beginning? Because anyone who reads boy culture knows that you're this huge fan, that you've written 2 books about her. Do you remember when it was exactly, or was it just merely being a fan? You just went, wow, I really like this.
Well, it started out, I remember very clearly the first time I ever heard her music was I was driving back from a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I heard her on the radio, and I loved the music. I remember I associated the song with Shannon, had a song called Let the Music Play around that time. I just liked the sound of the song, which was Holiday. I hadn't heard the previous stuff. So I really started liking her music, and then probably around the time when Like a Virgin was kicking into high gear, I really liked the fact that she used this allegedly dirty word in a song. I liked the idea. See, I fancied myself as being a provocateur, even though I totally wasn't. I was such a total, in high school, just a very kind of the nerdy guy who was kind of studious and square. Like, no one thought of me as provocative, but I liked provocative things, and I liked provocative literature. I liked all that, and I love the fact that she was, right out in pop culture in the mainstream doing this, and it just built from there. And it probably probably boils down to initially I was probably living through her sexually, because I was this closeted gay kid, and there was no way to express myself. Although I was expressing myself very handily by the time that song came out. But back then, there was no outlet, and you kind of live through her in a way. And I'm sure that happens with most people when they have their idols. You live through them to some extent,
Right.
And then you get to a point where you either live through them forever, or you kind of just appreciate them forever for some other reason, or you grow out of them. But that's what it was. I think there was like that combination of being provoking people on issues that were so stupid anyway. Like why should it have been such a big deal to use the word virgin? Why should that have been an awkward word to use? Why should sex be so verboten in everything that we talk about? Why can't you use the word condom on television? Like, there were so many things that just didn't make sense that she would always kind of tweak. So I like that. And I think that's what made me loyal to her forever, is just knowing that she's that kind of girl. I also really liked and related to the fact that, she had all these kind of gay people around her. Even then, you knew that she'd had a gay roommate who died of AIDS, and that she had a gay mentor, and her brother was gay. I really liked that, because there weren't a lot of people who were openly advocating for gay issues back then, especially people who, don't forget, she was a teen idol at that point. She was in, like, Tiger Beat. I appreciated that and was loyal to her for that. And then I think the thing that really kind of makes her stand the test of time is that she's someone who communicates with her audience kind of intellectually by using other things that we will also relate to. Like, she uses art, other musical sources, movies, all these things that she refers to in her work. She kind of communicates to us by using them, and I think that's a really smart. There's a very smart kind of progression in her work, and it's very consistent. It doesn't feel like, okay, here's another song. It just feels like there's kind of a chronology that you're following of things that are interesting to her and things that are interesting to many, or if not most, of her fans. It's important to know, like, where she's getting these things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like when she was in her Vogue video, and she has this kind of horsed image, and it comes to life. It's important to know where that comes from. She's not supposed to be like stealing it and hoping you don't notice. It's important to know where that comes from. So I think it makes her much more interactive as a pop star. So I think all those different things, and the fact that there's a whole list of things is important too. Because I mean, there were a lot of other stars I liked around the same time, and I probably liked Cyndi Lauper first, and then all the others, all the typical '80s stars. And I also liked, at the same time, I was really getting into like Marilyn Monroe and stars that my mom was into. But she's the one that stuck with me because she was kind of my era. She talked my language.
One of the things you talked about in the book that I made a note of it because I had to stop. I'll admit, it was hard for me to take notes reading your book because I really got engrossed into it. I really did. I related to so much of it, growing up in Michigan, so much of it. And then I go, ooh, Randy, take notes, write that down because you're going to want to ask about that. During a chapter you wrote about Yma Sumac, who I adore.
Yes.
You made a point of talking about the fact that whether it was Marlene Dietrich or whether it's Peggy Lee, Marilyn Monroe, things that gay men were supposed to like or stereotypically like. And you finally wrote, and it was on page 174, just so you know, I really read the book. So what if every gay man loves Marilyn Monroe and Marlene Dietrich and other divas? We all love Dick too, and that doesn't make you cooler to avoid that either. Of all things for me to pull out the book, the reason I love that, though, and I'll tell you why I bring it up, is there is this thing in the gay community. You're almost cooler if you can poo-poo things. Oh, that's right. So obvious. Like the obvious, we don't want the obvious, but sometimes the obviously talented, like a Barbra Streisand or a Madonna, or I just love that you wrote that down because that is a thing in the gay community, don't you think? Like,
it
I'm
is.
cool
I mean,
because I can
it totally is.
that.
It's definitely something that I think it's in the larger culture too, but it's more annoying to me when it's in the gay community because there's an identity involved, there too. It's like it becomes more personal when people feel that they're cooler if they don't like something that they feel is being foisted on them. And I just feel like, well, maybe it's just your own kind of lack of ego that you can't accept the fact that some people like this stuff. It's who cares? I mean, I never find it, I think people who react really negatively to stereotypes, I'm suspicious of their motives. And I mean, one thing I know, Joe, we talked about Joe Jervis earlier, he has a post he puts up every year for Gay Pride that I couldn't put it any better. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't put it any better than that puts it. It's like you want to distance yourself a little too much. Like you need to examine why you're so against this, why it's so threatening to you that you don't like something that maybe a lot of other people in your group like. It's not honestly, it's not a campaign to make you like it. So yeah, it is. I think it's an important point to make.
I really like
that. And I've gone out of my way to I think it's pretentious, and highfalutin, to make it seem like it's lesser if you like something everybody else likes. And I've always liked mass culture, and a lot of things that are considered high culture now were pop culture at one point. Right. And everything that's pop culture now will probably be considered high culture in the future. It's hard to imagine Katy Perry as the next Mozart, but I'm just saying, you never know. You never know.
Well,
I think anything that's popular isn't necessarily something that's not worthy. Like art doesn't. If it's art, it's art, and you should decide if you think it's good art or bad art. But don't assume that just because it's popular, it's less important.
Actually, you commented recently, and I love this that you did online because we had an exchange about my history as an actor on Broadway, and then now as a choreographer, and you didn't have any idea that I'd been involved in the theater. And I recently did a production of Hello Dolly in Florida, and that's where we kind of talked about that a little online. A lot for me that resonates from my blog is that I have this background in theater, and also that I know so many people in theater, not in a name-dropping way, but literally these are friends of mine. And so I love presenting them. I love sharing them. I love putting them out there. So anytime Billy Porter or Jerry Mitchell or any of these openly gay artists that are doing things on Broadway, I share it because I really want to present that and blah, blah, blah. And every now and then, I can get a little pushback from some people saying, oh, but that's so square, that's so obvious, or that's so this, or that's so... And I'm like,
gay. It's so gay.
It's so
like
gay. And I'm like, but I'm gay and I like it.
Right. It's like, it's okay.
I do like it. And I'm kind of smart, and I think this is worthy. So it is interesting that you do get that it's so gay comment.
From gays.
Judgment. Yeah, from gays. It's so ridiculous.
I don't know if I would go so far as to call it, self-loathing. I know a lot of people love to say it's internalized homophobia and whatever. I don't know if it's quite that, but it's some kind of weird desire to be unique, And it's in being that defensive about it, it kind of says to me, well, you kind of suspect that you're not that unique.
Right.
And I've never had that problem. Like I've always had yes. Like I've always felt like whenever I heard like in church like that being gay was wrong, my thought wasn't, oh no, am I wrong? My overriding thought was, well, they must be wrong. Then obviously, because I'm not, there's nothing bad about me.
Right.
So I've never really had that problem. But I think it's funnily enough, it's kind of connected to how so many people are conspiracy theorists these days. I feel like the desire to be unique and say, oh, I don't believe what the mainstream media is telling me. This is not true. Like there's that same desire of like, well, I'm not dumb like you. I'm unique. I'm better. I'm special. So
I'm not following the crowd, or
Yeah, I'm not a sheep. I'm not one of the sheep. It's like, oh, the gay sheep.
Well, maybe we all like it because it's good.
Yeah, maybe we do, and maybe we believe stuff because it's true.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Sometimes the most obvious answer is the correct one.
Exactly.
And sometimes the gayest answer is the best one.
I love you for that. The great thing about this book is you are very honest in some. Well, the entire book is all about being honest. Like you talk about some plastic surgery you had and whether you liked it or not, and where you originally thought you would never do that, then you did have some things done, and your experience with it. I've thought about the same thing, by the way.
Never the face.
Never the face. Never the face.
I've got this going for me. The face has never been touched.
Yes, God bless you.
So all the people who say I've had Botox, thank you, but no thank you.
Here's the thing that I've got to tell you about this book, and I mentioned earlier that I kind of had to walk away a few times, especially. You spend a lot of time on your childhood. I think a lot of people buying this book because of the title Starf cker. I did expect it. I'll be honest. I did expect it, and you might have heard this already. It would be more dishing about celebrities you'd talk to and wanting to be up against celebrities. And you spend a good almost third or first half of the book just talking about your growing up, your childhood, your college years that has nothing to do with celebrity and blah, blah, blah. Which isn't a bad thing.
I did get that, and I think I was kind of going for like
but it's a memoir.
I'm sorry. What were you saying?
It's a memoir, so I don't ding you for it at all.
Oh no, of course no. I just think I kind of also wanted to relate how we see, not just how I see, but how we see celebrity, especially when we're growing up, and how it has an impact later on. So I was kind of going for like, sometimes it was tangentially related to celebrity, but there was always supposed to always be a little bit of a thread there. And as far as like dishing, I definitely get that. I mean, and I do have some dishing in there, but there's a couple things about that. One is the period of my life where I was kind of interacting with people whose names anyone cares about is very limited. So it would have, and it's also that a lot of them were young at the time. So yes, I've met a lot of these people that are driving, the Us Weekly and Extra and everything of today, but I met them when they were kids, so I don't have a lot of dish. Like I don't have the best kind of dish. If you knew Zac Efron when he was 18, I'm sure if I'd known him when he was like throughout his 20s, there'd be a lot more stuff to say. But the other thing is, even though I can definitely be a bitchy person, and get me in person, and I'll say whatever. But I do kind of draw back from hurting people's feelings, publicly. I'll go after someone on their for their beliefs if I don't like what's going on, and I'll criticize a play within reason, but that kind of thing. But I do kind of I draw back from being too relentlessly bitchy, or even just hurting someone's feelings, and that's something I'm sensitive to. Like when I was writing the book, the hardest thing for me writing Starf cker was I wanted to tell things honestly that happened, but then I would think, oh my gosh, is this person going to be annoyed? Are they going to remember it differently? Because that happened a lot. Like I went back and checked things, or are they just going to even object to my honest remembrance of them, like my description of them? Like there's just so many. You can't really describe almost anything honestly and expect people to all say, oh, that's great. I totally agree. That's God, what I remember too.
Yeah, God no.
So so that's another reason why I kind of withdrew. Although I was thinking I could also maybe do a quick book on all the teen stars and just do a little one-liner on all of them.
Yeah, you literally could. I know you could.
Because those 20-somethings would live for that, like, finding out, like, what was Demi Lovato like?
Oh, yeah.
I need to hear what Demi Lovato was like at a photo shoot, well, but older people would be like, who cares?
It was interesting to me because when I was reading and the reason I mentioned I had to walk away sometimes is you literally struck a chord for me as a gay man myself growing up in Texas. and then moving to New York. There were a lot of things that you hit on that I just went, I completely relate to that, and I kind of wasn't ready to read that right now. So I'm going to like walk away from my computer for a second because I related to so much that you talked about being a gay man dealing with your family, dealing with I'm talking about the first third of the book really, and you dealing with at school, coming out, friends. I do love that you get a little open about friends becoming more than friends with benefits or something, but which I loved. That was the thing that surprised me about the book more than anything was I really thought the whole thing was going to be kind of like a gossipy thing, and it's not at all. You know.
It's not all glitz and glamour.
No, somehow it's not. It's not. I did love. I have to touch real quick on one other thing about the teen magazine because you mentioned about your first cover. Your first issue was 98 degrees on the cover.
Yes.
Blah blah blah. You were doing your first photo shoot, and Jeff Timmons said, we really don't do stuff with our shirts off. And then the idea, eventually, as you well know, he was actually the first celebrity guest host at Chippendales.
At Chippendales, of course. And then he went off and did his own thing.
And then he went off and did his own thing, which unfortunately he kind of did denigrating Chippendales, which I don't give him much credit for that. I will say I like Jeff a lot. He and I are friends, but he kind of gave interviews after the fact, after Chippendales kind of put him on the map with this stuff. And then he went off and said,
kind of like, this is better than.
Well, he said, well, I had ideas and they didn't want to be contemporary, so I decided to do my. He was a little negative, and I thought, well, you might want to be a little more graceful than that. And then the Men of the Strip thing kind of never really happened. It was going to be the show on the strip of the Las Vegas Strip, and other than a kind of a free performance they did at Mandalay Bay for the TV show.
Well, there were men who stripped, but they didn't actually take place on the strip.
Yeah, and the production was never really like a show on the strip. But I love that you mentioned that because it was funny that he starts out his career with 90 Degrees. We don't usually do this stuff with our shirts off. And then he not only became kind of an honorary Chippendale, but he ended up creating his own strip show and everything. So
I know. I never would have guessed that because it's. And I love him too. I mean, I'm good friends.
Great guy.
I would say I'm friendly with him too. But I think I maybe went on my way to mention that because I just find it so funny that like one major part of my job, like when I worked at that magazine, was trying to figure out like what we could put in the magazine that we could get away with because the girls all wanted the guys they liked with their shirts off.
Right.
And
they did.
No publicist wants their client with their shirt off because it seems trashy. Like especially when they're in a teen magazine because they feel like it's trashy and tacky. But of course, it's super high class and amazing once it's like Vanity Fair, and then they'll take it all off. They'll take it all off and hold their dick in their hand.
Right.
But so it was always like this thing of like, really, can't we do like a little cute thing on the beach? So it was always like this struggle trying to get the good stuff. I remember like one of the guys from O-Town, that was another thing. Like they always wanted Ashley Parker Angel, this blonde guy from O-Town. And it was just such a struggle. And then you'd get one and it'd be like such a big deal. And then years later, he's now on Instagram, like
constantly shirtless. I follow him on Instagram. He's constantly
shirtless. It's just so
shirtless.
funny. So I find it so ironic that these things change like that. And what was even funnier was like just 20 years before, before my tenure in the teen world, if you look back at those Tiger Beat magazines, I don't know.
God.
Some of those might have needed to be investigated because I would never, maybe that's where the impression came from that they were worried about. I never would have gone that far, but it is funny that if you go further back in time, 40 years ago, the teen magazines were incredibly salacious compared to today. Like they were, first of all, it was insane that the teen idols, so many of them were like middle-aged men
David
or like guys in their 30s. And then you'd see so much of their bodies. It was a little weird.
So did it surprise you when you were doing the teen magazine that like this was kind of out of bounds, like people didn't want that, or you?
Yeah,
it
was.
Knew.
It was. It seemed obvious to me that we all knew that this is what was going to be good. But I think it was a function of the fact that teen magazines were no longer driving the culture the way they were in the 70s. In the 70s, they had so much power they could make you do whatever they wanted. They'd be like, you're going to come into the office and take off your shirt. We're going to put you up against the wall, take pictures. That's happening. Whereas in the 90s, it was much more of a courtship and trying to get, whatever you could get, that was, forthcoming about their love life or what girls they liked or whether it was them on the beach with a shirt off. It was always much more of a negotiation because the magazines were still important, but they were not making stars. Like in the 70s, you could make a temporary star
Yeah.
A temporary, very lucrative for a time star. By the 90s, no. You weren't 90s and early 2000s. You weren't making a star. You were helpful. You were helping them along, but they needed to have They needed to have a record company behind them. They needed to have a TV show. It was a big deal. And nowadays, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, it's great to be in a teen magazine, but I just don't think it's just not the same. It's not the same as the 60s and 70s. If you look at the circulations, were just like astronomical.
Yeah.
In the 60s even, especially like Teen Magazine and those titles. It's kind of like the same comparison to TV networks. Like back when we were young, there was such a limited. 13 channels. So
Yeah.
whatever was on TV, if it
NBC,
made it that
ABC,
far,
CBS. That was it.
everyone saw it.
Yeah.
Like everyone was either seeing it or even failed programs back in the 80s probably had way more viewers than some of the shows that are considered successful today.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
that was
that
the same
funny?
way with magazines. I mean, they had million circulation. Like around the time when like Back to the Future was hitting and things like that in the 80s. These magazines were selling. Sometimes they would sell 1 million copies.
Wow.
And nowadays, I mean, it wouldn't even be a fraction of that. So it was a fun time. It was a really fun time to be involved with that. I got to be involved with it. In the same way, I also got to be involved with the porn magazine industry as it was dying out. I mean, that died out a lot faster, and it's basically dead now. But it was fun to be a part of it because you got to deal with a lot of complex personalities. And they were the same. I mean, really, the porn magazine and the teen magazine
You mentioned that in the book.
Yeah, and it's true because I realized it right away because, for one thing, I was working for a porn company while I was doing the teen magazine, which was a constant nightmare. I was so afraid people were going to find out and be offended. But it was the same thing because it was like, glossy magazines, giving them the same faces over and over again. It's just like repetitious, hitting them over and over with what they want. It was basically the same sort of industry, just for different demographic.
I should really let you go, but I have 2 more questions. 1, autograph shows. Go.
Oh my gosh.
I love that you talk about
autographs.
this. Yeah.
I got obsessed with these things, and for anyone who doesn't know what they are, they're gatherings of celebrities, depending on if it has a theme. Sometimes it's just kind of general celebrities. They all sit around in a huge, conference room at card tables, and they have a little helper, and you pay them money to get their autograph and or a photo op. And some of them can be hugely, some of them like for example, like Comic-Con is an example of somewhat of an autograph show that's huge and legitimate and makes tons of money. And then there's ones that are smaller that not that they're not legitimate, but they feel a little sadder because the lines aren't as long, the names aren't as big. But when I first read about these things, and I just thought, this is crazy. Like, why? Because I think I was inspired when I saw like some of the older stars who had been dying off, like Tony Curtis, had just done these shows. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it have been fun to have met Tony Curtis? I mean, get a picture with Tony Curtis? That's crazy. How could I not do this? So I started attending these things in Hollywood, and I went to Chiller Theater, which is like a horror-themed one in New Jersey. And I find them, they were so addictive. I spent so much money at these things. I went over and over because I thought I was kind of above it, but I also realized as I was getting into it, I was also really very much of it. Like I was very much kind of excited to meet some of these people that I'd grown up, watching. And some of them were very minor actors, but in kind of iconic roles or, even within your own little universe, iconic roles. But I loved it. I loved meeting them. And there's also that weird factor of being able to see how other people react to them and how they react toward the people. Because like sometimes crazy people walk up to them and say, I remember this, I can't remember who it was, but someone walked up to this guy and said, you look the same. You gained a little weight, but you look the same.
Oh my God.
And you're just like, really? You're going to tell this person they're sitting at a table, they have to listen to you. And of course, they're not going to react because they want to get your money. So they kind of have to listen to all the crazy babblings. But I mean, it's just like talk about if you're into people watching, it is the most voyeuristic experience. It's incredible. I mean, and then a lot of gay men go to these things, and I think they're very conservative. I don't know. I feel like there's a vibe at these conventions. There's kind of a conservative vibe to it. Maybe because the whole because they're so brazenly capitalistic.
Yeah.
But so they're not as gay as you would think. But the gay guys who go there, they often latch on to like an old time star that becomes like their gay, who will then sit at the table and take the money for them and make the change, and then they end up going to their house and helping them get ready. I mean, it's such a great. It's such a metaphor for gay fandom. It becomes like when you're there helping this like 30s actress get ready to go out and meet her public. I mean, that's amazing to me. So I've been to a bunch of those, and I think they're a lot of fun. They're not quite as fun as they probably would have been 20 years ago when there were more really, truly big names who are still alive and some really big, famous people have done these shows, and it's kind of, even to this day, Joan Collins does them, and I can't believe more people don't realize.
Isn't that amazing?
Joan Collins. Well, she had a lot of husbands, so maybe that's why. People are always like, they can't need the money. It's like, well, everybody wants money. You can make $10,000 a day at these things. Why wouldn't you go?
That's amazing. Isn't that amazing, though? I mean,
yes.
They can. The last question I want to ask, just because you do touch on it, it doesn't get any hits. We've discussed this already. But I do love the fact that you do discuss politics. And, today there was a new poll out from CNN. Like, Donald Trump is 20 points ahead of his nearest competitor in the GOP race. Because you talk about politics a bit. What is your take on this? Like, because, I actually had friends in Texas. I'm originally from Texas. Friends and friends' sons are emailing me saying, why do you guys pay so much attention to Donald Trump, because he's just a clown, he's not going to be the nominee, and yet we look at these polls and he's like ahead by so much. So
I pay attention to anyone that's being taken seriously by a large number of people, and
there you go.
We can't, just because we think he's ridiculous, if a lot of people don't, you got to adjust to that and realize, okay, this is important, this is a huge phenomenon. It's just like what I was saying with, just because something's popular doesn't mean it's something you dismiss. You have to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. And he has a huge amount of support. I personally think a lot of it is from, disgruntled white guys who are racist and who would never admit it, and who, if anything, would say that I'm racist for even saying the word racist. But, he's got a huge amount of support. And, yeah, the polls are a little alarming. I do kind of wonder what would happen as some of these other Republicans drop out, like where their support goes. Like as Jeb Bush peels away, does it go to Ted Cruz, or does it go to Donald Trump? Marco Rubio.
Maybe, yeah.
You wonder. I mean, and I was talking to some pretty high up people in the Democratic Party who know a lot more than I do how these things work, and they were saying to watch out for Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
He was the more threatening possibility, and I know this is weird. I mean, a lot of people would disagree with me. I think I would rather see Hillary Clinton, who's going to be the nominee. Like,
Hallelujah.
Let's just please be, serious.
Let's be honest.
Bernie Sanders is awesome. I'd be happy to vote for him.
Me too. I'm with you.
Not going to be the nominee, nor will he be the vice presidential election.
He won't.
But I'm just saying, she'll be the nominee, so deal with it. And then, as far as a Republican, I'd rather see her go up against Cruz, because I really think Cruz is, some people think he's apparently like a good speaker or whatever. I think he's much more beatable because he's just to me, he's such an obvious ideologue and doesn't have a lot that kind of goes along with him. Right. Whereas Trump, as crazy as he is, he's really good at riling people up, and he's had help from the TV medium for so long. Mm-hmm. You can't dismiss that. I mean, and there's a lot of people who, as crazy as he is, there's a huge section of people who aren't really focusing on all that. They don't really take him seriously, and they don't like it when people cluck their tongues and wag their fingers, and so you just kind of feel like, oh, he's just outspoken. So I think there's a large number of people that would probably vote for him, and I'd like my odds a lot better against Ted Cruz myself. Hopefully Trump will go away. I'd love to see him self-destruct. I think he's a terrible man. I've never liked him. I don't understand why anyone finds him, aside from his politics, I don't understand why anyone finds his persona appealing.
Me either.
He's just such an obnoxious person. He's basically like a caricature of like the greedy fat cat that you'd see like in the 1800s in a newspaper. Okay. Like he's a terrible person who like has made money on the backs of a lot of the people who now think he's so great. Mm-hmm. So I don't get it, but it's important to try to get it because, he could get the nomination. And I don't think a lot of the Republican elite would be thrilled with that, but they're going to vote for him before they vote for Hillary.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see, really, like, if he becomes the nominee. My friends in Texas who are calling him clowns now, will you vote for Donald Trump or will you vote for Hillary Clinton?
Someone they hate.
If someone you hate, but you're calling someone a clown, are you now going to vote for someone who you think is a clown?
Well, when I worked for a lovely woman. I consider her my mentor, who was a literary agent in Chicago, and she was a John Birch Society Republican, even though she also fancied herself somewhat of a bohemian, because she was kind of a rebel because she worked, and she'd known people who were bisexual, so she was that kind of an interesting character. And she always voted for Republicans, and my coworker and I were always like, Jane, what about, Quayle will be one heartbeat away from the presidency.
Oh my God.
He's so...
Can you imagine?
He's not qualified. Like, how can you possibly vote for Bush if Quayle's on the ticket? And she said, well, on the job training. So
yeah,
I really think
yeah.
people, they disassociate from, like, the reality of it. When it's someone who's going to toe the line of what they believe in or they think they believe in, they're going to vote for whoever that person is. And, I'm sure Democrats are the same way. You're going to vote for, most Democrats are going to vote for, the
Hillary.
Democrat over the Republican, even if the person is, not to their liking, or even if the person is someone who's, I'm trying to think of it, the last time a Democrat was just so ridiculously bad. I remember I can't remember who it was, but there was a guy in the South who was just a ridiculous candidate, and I can't believe that he'd even gotten to the point where he was on the Democratic ticket. Like, it was very suspicious whether he was even a Democrat, and he was, like, just clearly not someone who's qualified. I'm sure in that case most Democrats would not vote for that person. But for the most part, if they're out there saying I'm gonna vote for or against all the stuff you're for and against, people are gonna vote for him. So that's what scares me about Trump, is that I think he does have that. He does appeal to a large group of people that might want
Because he
some
says
kind
what
of
they want to
like
hear.
an anti-Obama vote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he says what they want to hear. And
He's
whether it's good politics or not, he's just saying it. It's almost like he's like paid attention and gone, this is what they all want me to say, so I'm going to say it. And cause
I consider
him
the great white nope, because he's like the opposite of Obama. He's kind of like a punishment, or a palate cleanser, for the white guys who love what he's feeding them. And what disturbs me about him is and there's so many things, but he's so far right in some of the stuff he's doing that I hate when people compare people to Hitler. It's just to me it's so easy, but he's really getting close to that territory where he's like courting Alex Jones and saying how wonderful Alex Jones is, and he's always supported this whole birther thing.
And
databases
he's just unapologetic
now, we're going to make
about
lists
of people. We're going to make lists of people.
Yeah, and I think if Hillary makes any kind of a false statement, Hillary has for a year or whatever now been attacked for possibly using the wrong kind of email system and possibly exposing it. Like, that's such a nothing issue compared to him saying, like, we might have to round up Muslims and put them in a camp. Like, if she never said anything parallel to some of the things he says, she'd be shot at dawn. So I don't know how he gets away with it, and it is disturbing. And our entertainment-driven society is partly to blame, because he's getting a lot more exposure than Marco Rubio is. But I'm hopeful that he won't be the nominee, and I'm hopeful that he won't be the president. If he's the president, I might have to move. I mean, when someone like that, when you look at the entire field of Republican contenders and consider one of them might be president, I'm telling you, it makes Mitt Romney look like Gandhi. You're like, wow. Oh, yeah. Like, really? Mitt Romney suddenly looks like an elder statesman compared to these people, like someone you could really handle as president. When you look at some of these guys, and it just scares me. Like, what's going to be the next slate of contenders?
Oh, I agree with you completely. I do. I agree. I'm exactly on the same page you are. It's kind of frightening. And even once we step past Trump, we look at Cruz and we look at Huckabee. Oh, Huckabee. Well, nothing will happen with him, but he's in there to get his book deal, so that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I tend toward the ones that I hate, but that are not so religious. Like the ones that are religious on top of it makes it even worse.
Oh, it makes it even worse. And
but then that makes me, I don't know. Cruz is just...
God bless John Kasich. Of course, everyone who's a Democrat who pays attention knows that, well, if I had to deal with a Republican, John Kasich is at least a moderate.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
But he's not in the hunt at all, so...
No, he's not going to happen, so...
No. Well, listen...
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. It is a question of, like, which one, if you had a gun to your head, would you want...
What could you deal with?
Or would you just grab the trigger and pull it?
Thank you. I could talk to you all afternoon, and
yeah, it's just so fun. Thank you so much.
You are so smart and you're so charming, and I love the book Starf cker online. Buy it. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Buy it. Buy. If I wasn't being obvious enough yet, I really enjoyed it. I loved the writing. I loved the relationship that I felt to your teenage years, and then all of your years writing and editing and publishing the teen magazine and everything since then, and everything on boyculture.com. I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the reads. That's why I really want to recommend it to people, because I enjoyed reading it. And I
hope people love it, and there's a lot there to read because it's like 400 pages.
It is 430 pages.
They do get a good value. They get a good value for it.
Well,
it's kind of embarrassing when my memoir is like twice as long as, a famous person's memoir. Okay.
Well, when I got it on Monday, I'm like, oh, I need a day to read this. Excuse me. Can we push back? But I really did. I really enjoyed the read. I really do. So thank you for that. And everybody, check out boyculture.com every single day. Thank you so much, Matthew, for having the time to talk to us. I'll talk to you soon.
Of course. Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's the show for tonight. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I invite you to come back every time for The Randy Report. If you could do me a favor, since I just launched the show, if you're watching online right now, in your browser window above the little slideshow, you'll see a little pink button that says follow. If you hit follow, it will let you know the next time I have a new show, and you can follow me all over Blog Talk Radio. Also, remember, you can find me online every single day, blogging about pop culture, entertainment, and politics at therandyreport.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Let's have a little bit more of Capital City's Holiday. And remember, everyone, be nice to each other, because if you don't, someone might hit you.
Put your hands together. Celebrate.